The big question today, will this man here to my right, Niners general manager John Lynch, make a move? It is the day of the 2024 NFL trade deadline, and coming up on today's San Francisco 49ers report, we're going to pass along the latest Niners trade buzz going into the deadline, which, by the way, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific for today on this Tuesday, November 5th. And we'll also take a look at some trade targets that San Francisco could elect to go after in order to improve their roster. Before we dive in, let's keep it moving here on the largest independently run Niners channel right here on YouTube. We're 1,780 people away from 150,000 subscribers. And today, it's your choice, your vote. Vote and subscribe to the Niners Report for the best Niners coverage right here on YouTube. And if you hit that sub button, that's got me feeling nicey. As for what the Niners have done in recent years, in-season trades, deadline trades, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have been very active as an organization and as a twosome helping to lead this team. They traded for Emmanuel Sanders in 2019 to bring in more wide receiver depth. He ended up being a key cog in that Niners offense that year. They made a move for Jordan Willis in 2020, defensive line depth, and over the next couple of years, he ended up being an important player for that football squad. Charles Omenihu, a good versatile option who could play defensive tackle and defensive end. He ended up really developing under Chris Kosarek's watch, who's the best defensive line coach in the NFL. They made a superstar blockbuster move for Christian McCaffrey in 2022. Since then, he's really moved the needle for this offense, and that's putting it lightly. He's been arguably the best skill position player in football since that move. And then last year, San Francisco traded for Chase Young, and before that, they even made an addition in bringing in Randy Gregory. So far today, this morning on deadline day, we've already seen a couple of trades. The Detroit Lions, they've been in the market for a pass rusher over the last couple of weeks after the Aiden Hutchinson injury. Broke his leg, could be out for the rest of the year. And so they traded for Zadarius Smith in a move with the Cleveland Browns. Browns get a 5th-round pick in 2025, a 6th-round pick in 2026. The Lions get Smith, very productive edge rusher, and then a 2026 7th-round pick. The Bears and Bengals made a move. The Bengals brought in Khalil Herbert, running back depth. Not really a good pass blocker, but a versatile option who can run it and catch the ball out of the backfield. The Bears got a 7th-round pick in exchange for him. And then this is classic Cowboys right here. The Cowboys traded a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo, who's not really a good wide receiver in this league. Keep in mind the value for players like Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. They didn't go for that much more than Jonathan Mingo. How about them Cowboys? As for what ESPN NFL insider Dan Graziano had to say about the Niners maybe making a move, the Washington Commanders, Pittsburgh Steelers, San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles are teams that can make moves to bolster their pursuit of the Kansas City Chiefs or the Detroit Lions. But right now, those are the clear top 2 teams, and each could get better by the end of the day. Chiefs have been active. They traded for Josh Uche and DeAndre Hopkins over the last couple of weeks. And then the Lions make that move for Zadarius Smith. So they have gotten better. Will the Niners get better? Here are their biggest needs. Offensive line help, although it's really hard to target an offensive lineman for an in-season trade because all teams are trying to improve their respective offensive lines, and there aren't a lot of good offensive linemen who are on the market. Wide receiver depth, although I like where the Niners are at, even after the Brandon Ayuk season-ending injury. Pass rusher, defensive tackle, the top 2 needs in my estimation for San Francisco. And then linebacker, but Dre Greenlaw expected to come back over the next few weeks. And let's section this off from blockbuster trade targets to more realistic trade targets. If the Niners wanted to go all in, Max Crosby, a superstar. Hassan Reddick, he got that contract redone in his favor with the New York Jets, but could the Jets decide to trade him because the Jets are on the outside looking in for the playoff picture in the AFC? Myles Garrett, arguably the best edge rusher in football, Trey Hendrickson, a top 5, top 10 pass rusher in the National Football League. And then Cam Jordan, a veteran with the New Orleans team that has lost 7 games in a row. I love the game of Max Crosby. I love how he plays with so much toughness, with so much hustle. He'll do whatever is required to be in between the lines. He's a great teammate. And it's not like he's a twitched up athlete, but he wins by being gritty. And I want to see Max Crosby demand a trade from the Las Vegas Raiders. Get out of that perennial losing organization that is always hovering in dysfunction and chaos and drama. Max Crosby was drafted in 2019. When the Raiders inevitably fire Antonio Pierce, he's already going to be on his 5th coach in 7 years. I want to see him playing some games that actually matter, not play for a terrible organization in the Las Vegas Raiders. If the Niners were to make a move for him, Crosby, Bosa, at that edge rusher spot, man, that would be really fun to watch. He has 6.5 sacks this year. Hassan Reddick has played in 2 games this year because he held out up until a couple of weeks ago. A half sack for New York. They're really going to have to get hot for the remainder of the year to have a chance in the AFC. Myles Garrett, since he came into the league as the number 1 overall pick out of Texas A&M, year in, year out, he's been dominant. His sack numbers have really gone up the last couple of weeks. He has 7 at the halfway pull of the 2024 campaign. Trey Hendrickson is a player who has 11 sacks this year. Like Max Crosby, he's not really twitchy. It's not like he's going to be that player who has that elite first step, but he's going to hustle. He's going to run to the football. He wins with the pass rushing craft. But I don't think the Bengals are going to trade him away because they're in a spot, I think 4-5 right now, where they still have a realistic shot to make the playoffs. And as far as the Raiders go, I don't think they trade away their franchise face in Max Crosby, Myles Garrett. I don't think that the Browns trade away their franchise icon. Cam Jordan could be on the move. He is an older player and a declining player playing for a New Orleans team which fired their head coach, Dennis Allen, on Monday, that has lost 7 games in a row after their surprising 2-0 start. No sacks this year. He has been a very productive player throughout his career. Consummate leader, consummate pro, would fit the Niners culture. That could be a player who you don't have to give up a lot for, who's on a losing team, who a lot of people thought was going to be a lifelong, career-long Saint, who could end up getting dealt. I would be surprised if the Niners went all in at the NFL trade deadline. I think they go more so for a rotational piece on the defensive side of the football. But per Bovada, the sports book, the 49ers also have the second best odds to land Miami Dolphins star wide receiver Tyreek Hill. And the Dolphins, because Tua Tagovailoa was out for so long after yet another diagnosed concussion, they could look to sell. But the issue with Tyreek Hill, he's extremely expensive over the next couple of years with an average annual value of more than $30 million. But even with bad quarterback play this year, still putting up some solid numbers. We know that he's a home run vertical threat who could take the top off of the defense. He's a game breaker anytime he gets his hands on the football. You can use him as a gadget weapon. The production the previous 2 seasons before 2024, unbelievable. He was the highest graded wide receiver last year per Pro Football Focus, ahead of Brandon Ayuk. Almost 1,800 yards last year, receiving 13 touchdowns. And the year before that, more than 1,700 yards. What an electrifying addition he would be. And he'd be a great scheme fit for these reasons. If the 49ers were to trade for Tyreek Hill, it would shock so many people across the NFL. I don't think it's going to happen, but as far as him being a scheme fit goes, he is the vertical threat who could take the top off of the defense. And the safety always has to account for Tyreek Hill. So he's always going to have to shade over. And with him getting vertical, what does it open up underneath? Kyle Shanahan likes to call a lot of crossers for Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall. George Kittle controls the middle area of the field. Brock Purdy is excellent with targeting the middle area of the field in between the numbers and in between the hashes. And so if you have Tyreek Hill going vertical, it opens up everything underneath. And I know that the Niners' yards after the catch numbers have been down this year, but Kyle Shanahan designs his routes for his wide receivers so that they can pick up yards after the catch. And Tyreek Hill would certainly help San Francisco in that regard. So what say you? Do the Niners even need to make a trade? T for trade, P for pass. Let me know down in the comment section right now. We'll get to some realistic trade targets coming up just around the corner. Players who San Francisco could go after as compared to some of those blockbuster players. Stay tuned for that. But first, make sure you sign up with Game Time. And when you use the code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS, you get $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. The best app in the ticketing marketplace because you get the best seats at the lowest price guaranteed. And prices drop as the event gets closer. So not only will you be able to save money by using the code CHATSPORTS, you'll have the best price point and the best vantage point. Now, it's not just an app for sporting events. You can go to concerts, comedy shows, theater events, and a whole lot more. The Niners will be on the road coming out of the bye against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oftentimes this year, the Niners have played at a rest disadvantage. They will have a rest advantage over Tampa Bay. And on top of that, with the Buccaneers playing in a short week, they played in overtime, a hard-fought game against Kansas City. Plenty of tickets available for that. Following week in Week 11, the Niners will host the Seattle Seahawks in what is going to be a big divisional game because the NFC West is wide open. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use that code CHATSPORTS. You get $20 off. Terms apply. First purchase only. We appreciate Game Time for making today's show possible. As for some realistic Niners trade targets, what could Kyle Shanahan and general manager John Lynch cook up here? We've talked a lot about Davon Godchaux, a run-stuffing defensive tackle for New England. They already traded away Josh Uche to the Kansas City Chiefs. They could trade away a player like Kendrick Bourne. KJ Osborne could get dealt. Godchaux could also be traded. Azeez Ojulari, a twitched-up edge rusher who can really generate some pressure on the quarterback. He has 6 sacks this year. Arden Key, familiar face, playing under former Niners front office executive Ran Carthon. He was excellent for San Francisco and used that resume with the Niners to get a bag in free agency from Jacksonville, then signed with Tennessee. He could play edge. He can play defensive tackle. The Niners always covet those players up front. San Francisco could entertain bringing back Chase Young, although I think they found out last year he doesn't really fit the culture. And if they want to bring in a wide receiver depth piece, could be KJ Osborne, could be another former Niner in Kendrick Bourne. For Godchaux, number 1 in the NFL in rush defense snaps among all defensive tackles. The Pro Football Focus numbers aren't great, but he would be a good scheme fit. 6'3", 330, playing alongside some other pretty good players. He can be that run-stuffing player who could help the Niners stop the run, which has been a little bit of an issue over the last couple of years. Azeez Ojulari, one of my favorite players among all NFL trade candidates because I think that he can be a building block for whichever team decides to acquire him. He's only 24 years old. He was a second-round pick out at Georgia back in 2021, 6'3", 240. He's in the final year of his contract. He doesn't have massive sack numbers throughout his career, so I think that he could be affordable to retain in free agency. He's pretty much a younger Leonard Floyd and a very similar player. Similar build, fast first step, good bend coming off the edge, and he's had production in his NFL career. This year, I think he's played really, really good football. An overall PFF grade 59.8, pass rush grade 57.5, run defense grade 62.1. His game has really come along well. With Kayvon Thibodeau going on IR with an injury, he's gotten more snaps, and he's ended up playing very, very well. 8 games going into this past week, he was able to tally 6 sacks. Obviously, databases differ in sack numbers. Some don't count half sacks, some do. So according to Pro Football Reference here, 6 sacks for Ojulari, 6 TFLs. He's actually improved against the run. And for Arden Key, he's starting to get a little bit older, but scheme familiarity, locker room familiarity, and he's having a pretty good year for Tennessee. 4 sacks, another one of those rotational types of players for Tennessee, and would be for San Francisco, but you know that he can be disruptive. You know that he can be a good contributor for this defense. 6'5", 240, and with that size, he can play inside. He can play outside. For Chase Young, it's never been about the potential or the body type or the ability. It's really just the consistency. A guy who's 6'5", 265, a physical menace like that, shouldn't only have 2 sacks. The lack of effort, certainly red flags for me from time to time. And then Kendrick Bourne. He has 8 catches, 70 yards this year. Inconsistent quarterback play in Foxborough. First, it was Jacoby Brissett. Now Drake May. Drake May, I think, has a lot of potential. Kendrick Bourne did miss a lot of the year. He's come back over the last few games, coming back off that torn ACL. He's looked pretty good. He would be a depth piece, again, scheme familiarity, organizational familiarity, if the Niners decided to go that route. So before we hop on out of here, pick a player you want the Niners to trade for as you venture down there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll be back later. If the Niners make a move, we'll be talking about it, most likely going live, at the very least a video. If they don't make a move, we'll still recap today's action and pass along some more Niners news and analysis.